Bethany Mandel now joins me. Hello, Bethany.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I have two things to talk about with you. The nation's report card and tariffs for national security purposes. Let's go in reverse order. Seth was not on the program this morning, so I don't know if he's as badly informed as John Podhoretz, Matt Continetti, Christine Rosen, and Abe Greenwald, but all they were talking about were economic tariffs to raise revenue. These tariffs are intended to stop migration and end fentanyl into the country, right?
So I did not listen to today's podcast, but I think that there is a uniformity to the editorial beliefs of the commentary squad. I am married to one of the commentary squads, so I will tread lightly. But I don't agree. I think that a lot of the commentators that are talking about these tariffs are talking about it purely in economic terms. And when I actually quoted you in a New York Post column that I wrote for tomorrow's paper. It's not a matter of economics. It's a matter of national security, whether it's fentanyl coming from Mexico or, economic espionage coming, not just economic, but all kinds of espionage coming from China. It's long overdue for the American president to be aggressive, and these tariffs are one of those ways. And
late this afternoon, Canada buckled. They're doing a very big border buildup. Mexico is in the process of buckling, and I would never lay off China because China is making the precursor chemicals, and they know what they're doing, in my opinion. Bethany, do you agree with that?
Yeah, there was a funny list that I saw on Twitter of all the countries that have buckled under Trump in the course of the last 2 weeks. Mexico, Panama, Colombia, Venezuela, Canada. It's just the list keeps on going. They don't seem to understand, and this is something that I find truly perplexing, because it's not like Donald Trump is a new figure on the scene. This is all a negotiation tool to him. This is not just a chess game. He's playing 3D chess. He's always played 3D chess. And I don't understand. That's why when I saw all of these tariff conversations, I thought to myself, I wonder what the real objective is here, because it's not tariffs.
No, we're not going to raise that much money from Canada or Mexico, and we might hurt some of our consumers, but I know people who have lost their children to fentanyl. I also, when I was running the Nixon Library, whenever we had a guest speaker arrive, the Moms Against Fentanyl would be in the parking lot to try and get someone to pay attention to fentanyl. It's not the opioid crisis. It's not the Sacklers. They're bad people. They've gotten punished. They're bankrupt. That was OxyContin. This is different. This is putting fentanyl into everything that kids like to try once. But as the First Lady of Virginia says, one pill can kill if you got fentanyl in it.
Yeah. So this is, I think, part of, and this is a conversation you would have to have with Selena to really get into the depths of it. This is part of the problem with having people in power, both in the media and also in government, who come from a point of privilege. They don't have a Facebook feed that, when a bad batch hits their hometown, they see obituaries. That's how I grew up. I grew up literally in a trailer park, and there were 2 periods a couple of years ago where I knew a bad batch had hit my hometown because I saw half a dozen obituaries scroll through my Facebook feed over the course of 2 weeks. This is something that has been impacting normal America for a long time, and the media have completely checked out. The rich privileged class that run the Democratic Party out of the same 20 cities in America, Martha's Vineyard, New York City, LA, Upper West Side of Manhattan, though. They don't seem to understand that this has been the reality for normal America for the last 15 years.
It's funny that you should mention that, because I do get the obituaries from the Warren Tribune Chronicle, my hometown. And it is Catholic practice to pray for the dead, so I try and say a little prayer. They're mostly older than I am by 10 or 15 years, sometimes 20 or 30 years. But when I see a 22-year-old or 25-year-old, inevitably, they don't tell you cause of death, but you're thinking OD. And that is in Fentanyl Alley. And J.D. Vance knows about this. And I'm glad that Trump is doing this. And I hope they bomb the cartels. I really do. Now, Bethany, I want to switch to moms at war. First of all, this is your new Substack. and tell people about it and whether there's a podcast, because I'm going to transition to the Nation's report card after you tell about people about this.
Yeah, so it's the momwars.substack.com, starting as a Substack, and we're going to be moving into a podcast in the next week or two. And basically, Cara Kennedy and I saw an opening in the marketplace of the fact that there's not normal mom conversations happening. There's not normal relationship conversations happening. On the far right, there's this sort of deification of trad wives. And on the left, there's the David Hoggs of the world who say, I'm not going to have kids because I want to drive a Porsche. There is a middle road, and we need to be speaking to Americans who have kids, who want kids, who think that they're a blessing. But there is not a lot of content out there for us, normies. and it goes into the expert sphere too. So many parenting experts are so anxious and so paralyzed by that anxiety that they're giving bonkers advice. One parenting column I read said that a kid was waking up at night because they were hungry, and the columnist said, "Well, just leave a stick of beef jerky on their nightstand." And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, or just tell them they'll eat in the morning. Call me crazy. I recorded a podcast with Barry Weiss and Nellie Bowles before they had their second child. And the feedback I got from that podcast was unlike anything I've ever gotten. So I decided, there is a market for this, and let's just try to fill it.
Yeah, you, Mary Catherine, and my daughter are all in the same demo. And you've got 6, and Mary Catherine and my daughter have 4. And they keep citing Emily Oster to me, but it's not something I can consume. So I told my daughter we're going to do a couple of long conversations for podcasts about grandfather, daughter, or grandfather, mom, and because things are different now than when I was raising kids. And I really don't have any advice to give anyone because it's different, right? It's completely different. But I think what you're about to do is long overdue. Let me set the stage for part 2. Mary Catherine and Vic were talking on Getting Hammered about the Nation's report card, and it's called nationsreportcard.gov, and Department of Education does it. Now, run down the stats for the benefit of those people who didn't hear this. They test in 2024 and in 2022 on math and literacy, and they indicate for both the 8th grade and the 4th grade, the average score for reading, I'm going to focus only on reading, literacy here. For the 4th grade, the average score went down, the 10th percentile went down, the 25th percentile went down, the 50th percentile went down, the 75th percentile went down, and there was no significant difference for the 90th percentile, which means they're illiterate anyway. In grade 8, the 2024 to 2022, average score went down, 10th percentile went down, significant decrease, by the way, is what it calls, significant decrease for the 25th percentile, significant decrease for the 50th percentile, no significant difference in the 75th and the 90th percentile. So the functionally illiterate kids in the 8th grade didn't get any better either, and everyone else got worse. Bethany, I think this is a crisis, and I'll talk to you after the break. So I'm back with Bethany Mandel between the breaks that are on the air. Bethany, did you know about those scores?
Yeah, no, I have been getting so many inbounds from folks about those scores because it's a joke. And I actually joked about it on the Mom Wars Substack because I am judged by, as a homeschooler, my kids are assessed by the public school system. And I think it might be time for the homeschool mom who teaches her children the Bible and the original Hebrew, Plutarch and Latin, to start assessing the public school kids down the road, because those scores that you cited are actually better than the ones at the public school.
Now, I'm not throwing a complete blanket over all of public education. My grandchildren have gone to public schools. They're super readers because their mom's a super reader. There are books everywhere. Their dad's a super reader. Their grandparents are super readers. All we do is read. So they're all super readers. I'm sure they're in the top 5% of the nation when it comes to their grade school. So it's not all public schools. But Bethany, should this not be a crisis? Because if we turn out a cohort of kids who cannot read, they're doomed in the economy. Are they not?
They're doomed everywhere. And that's the thing that was so frustrating during COVID, was because we were teaching a subset of kids how to read, kindergarten, first, second, who were trying to do that on Zoom, who were trying to do that behind masks, and learning from teachers who were wearing masks. That result of you can't sound out a word because, first of all, they're not teaching phonics, but now they can't read anyway. That result is they can't understand a history textbook. They can't understand a science textbook. That ensures their failure across the board. The scores that we're seeing in fourth grade are the result of that COVID generation. And the gaps are just going to continue to get wider because the kids who can't read in those classrooms are going to be more and more and more disruptive because they're angry and they're bored and they're frustrated. They're going to disrupt learning for the other 20% of the kids who can actually learn. And it's just going to get worse and worse. And I've heard from teachers and administrators that the behavior problems that they've seen since COVID are driving seasoned teachers out of profession because they have no tools in their toolbox. And the progressive ideologues who are running our education system are pushing restorative justice in schools, which means that when a kid is violent, they sit down and talk to him about their feelings instead of punishing them. That is this is part of why we started the Mom Wars, because this gentle parenting nonsense where you can't dare discipline a child has bled into the school districts. And now kids aren't being disciplined and have boundaries or guardrails in any portion of their life.
Now, my daughter-in-law retired from teaching concurrent with the birth of my son and her first child, and I don't know what number grandchild it is for me, but it's a big one. And she just said the kids have gone feral, and she had been a teacher for 8 years. I said, can't do it. Not going to do it. Wouldn't be prudent. If she comes back, she'll come back in the Catholic system. Stand by, Bethany. I have a suggestion on what to do. I want to know what you think cold. I'll be right back with Bethany Mandel. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Bethany Mandel was kind enough to talk to me during the break. We'll put it all on my YouTube channel. I think you should send it to every mom. Bethany, spell slowly where people can find your Substack.
The MOMWARS.substack.com. The momwars.substack.com.
And you will have a podcast soon?
Yep. Hopefully in the next week or two.
So if I were looking at these numbers, and they're awful for fourth grade, because the fourth grade teacher that my daughter had, who was brilliant, August, if you're listening, we love you, said to us in a parent-teacher conference, good news is your daughter's a great reader. Grades 1 through 3, you learn to read so that you can read to learn. Grades 4 through ever. And that grade 1, 2, 3 number, it's so stunning how badly they're reading in fourth grade. I would immediately test every kid in the public school system and resegregate them within age bands. You don't want an 8th grader with a 2nd grader, but 6th, 7th, 8th, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. I would resegregate every classroom for as much reading as they need until they can read. If they can't read, and I would also fire everyone in the school that's not teaching reading, except the janitor. They got to keep it clean. But I don't want guidance counselors. I don't want a librarian. I want reading classes like around the clock. If you can't read, you cannot be part of an advanced economy. Am I crazy?
I mean, they also need to have conversations with parents. This was a frustration during COVID of mine that they decided to just throw every kid on a screen instead of interfacing with every single family. And obviously that's more work, but they would have been, more successful in the long term to sit down and say, what kind of work are you equipped to do with your kid? How can we do more?
Good point.
I don't want kids to see reading as drudgery and something that they're being subjected to. So I wouldn't want it to be that rigorous, but I want them to want to read. I want to give them that joy of learning again. And right now in the classrooms, they have to split it up and make smaller groups so that kids who are excelling can excel, and the kids who need extra help get that extra help. I have a friend, Sarah, she teaches 3rd grade in Tennessee, and they weren't closed that long during COVID, and yet she said that in her 3rd grade classroom last year, she had students who couldn't read CVC words. That's consonant, vowel, consonant. Bob, cat, dog. They couldn't read those words. I have a kindergartner who started her kindergarten year being able to read those words. That's how it should be. And honestly, it's an indictment of our school system, but it's also an indictment of parents in our society, because this is a nationwide crisis and there's a lot of bad guys here.
Oh, there are, and I'm giving an amnesty from Hugh land. I don't want to score points. I really don't. I just want kids to be able to read. And to do that, we have to shake up the system. Part two, everyone should be going to school year round for 3 or 4 years. We can't afford the summer breaks. And I don't care what your teachers union contract is. It's a national emergency. I don't know if you take a month off. My kids always went to year-round school, K through 8. So they got 4 breaks at 3 weeks a year, and that was great. But public school, by the way. I'm just curious, do you think we got to break the mold in a lot of significant ways because it's broken?
I mean, that requires a willingness to innovate that I don't think exists in the public school system as it is. The only innovation that I've seen is throw kids on screen for 1.5 years so that they could go teach remotely in Puerto Rico. That's the extent of their willingness to innovate. And so, I mean, we should be able to take our tax dollars and go elsewhere to hire teachers, to hire tutors, to do all of these things with people who actually care about children. And that doesn't seem to be the folks who are in charge of public education in many school districts across the country.
Well, this brings me to what the Congress can do. In the budget reconciliation, they can say, it's part of the spending power, if you receive federal funding, it will be cut off unless you offer a backpack voucher of at least 50% of the cost of educating your children so that they can go to a private school. And Tennessee just opened up for 20,000 vouchers, but only Arizona has universal school choice. Everyone, it's not even close to what it costs, but it's $5,000 or $6,000 or something. You can get someone to teach your kid for $6,000 how to read. To me, it's that simple. Yeah. Ought it to be that simple? Congress to demand it?
I mean, something really drastic needs to be done because this is a national emergency. I have loved watching President Trump. I honestly, my most controversial take is I'm glad he lost in 2020 because he had 4 years to come out the gate swinging, and Lord has he. Yes. He's talked about breaking down the Department of Education, and he needs to, Congress needs to take that fire that's under Trump and run with it also. We have control. Republicans have control of the House and the Senate. You have no excuses. Go for it, friends.
And what do you say as a mom to a child who is not reading well and is in a not so good public school that doesn't seem to care? What's the mom war's advice?
Sit on my lap and let's read a book. Let's keep reading together. Build a library, go to the library, and it is your job to sit with your kid and read to them and make it fun. But, this is your job as a parent to make sure that they don't come out of their schooling without a love of reading and without the ability to read.
I want to end it there. I can't do better than that. Bethany Mandel, themomwars.substack.com, podcast coming to you soon. Thank you for coming early and staying long, Bethany. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Hugh.